Showtime! The Capital G show starts right now.
What's up YouTube, Capital G here. We're talking Noble Knights in this video, more specifically Merlin, because the effect has been completely revealed. This is one of the most anticipated cards, I would say, coming out this fall winter season, because I mean a lot of people are looking at Merlin and they're saying, okay, this is either going to be the card that makes Noble Knights as an archetype, or I mean if Merlin fails, they're basically just going to plummet into the abyss and never speak of them again. And I mean, I looked at Merlin and I'm like, I was pleasantly surprised. I was really hoping that this would be one of the cards that was kind of like a catalyst for them to kind of rise up in the competitive game, and I think it has the potential. So anyways, Merlin is a Dark Spellcaster level 3, 1400 attack, 500 defense. The stats are actually pretty respectable for a level 3. The effect says you can only use each effect of Merlin once per turn. You can tribute this card, special summon one Noble Knight monster from your deck. You cannot special summon monsters the turn that you activate this effect except Noble Knight monsters. During either player's turn, you can banish this card from your graveyard. Immediately after this effect resolves, Synchro Summon one Noble Knight Synchro Monster using monsters you control. During either player's turn, you can banish this card from your graveyard. Immediately after this effect resolves, Xyz Summon one Noble Knight Monster using monsters you control. So the first thing I thought about when I read Merlin was, well shit, it looks like Noble Knights got themselves a Lonefire Blossom, and obviously that's because the effect is very similar, and I think that that's what this card is going to boil down to being. I think it's going to be just a Noble Knight version of Lonefire, even though it's not a Noble Knight itself. I think that Konami put a cap on the effects being once per turn because they looked at Lonefire, they said, okay, we don't want you causing any shenanigans like that card, especially when you think about Lonefire plus Soul Charge and all the crazy nonsense that happens. I understand that you couldn't activate Merlin and then Soul Charge it back because of its inherent effect, but you could hypothetically normal summon two of them in one turn, and I just think that they didn't want any part of any type of possible like Merlin abuse or anything like that. But more importantly, when I look at Merlin, I think this is a card with multiple effects, but all of them are actually good and relevant. Obviously, the Lonefire effect is probably the most common effect you're going to be using. It's great. Get any Noble Knight monster you want. You can still special summon as much as you want. You just have to make sure that they're Noble Knights. And the ability to get Boars turn 1 on the field is going to be like way more consistent in this deck, especially with 3 Rota. Like, I think Boars just, he's that fucking dude that you always, it's kind of like the Yamato of Noble Knights. Just because you summon him, he's a +1. He gets your like super stacked board with all your protection, Noble Arms cards kind of rolling. And then you've got the graveyard effects, and these let you, either synchro or exceed during your opponent's turn. I think that this is mainly going to be used to dodge targeting cards. I mean, I actually think that there is some value in this effect. Like, there's actually a lot of value, because when you look at cards like Phoenix from Windblast and Karma Cut, Squamata, Dragon, a whole bunch of cards out there that are commonly played that target your monsters, this gives you a really easy answer to all of those cards. And I mean, 2 of the most common matchups, Shadows and Burning Abyss. If you're consistently keeping 2 monsters on board against Shadows and Burning Abyss, I think that that effect is going to be relevant at least once per game. They're going to try and do something to your monsters at some point, or maybe your opponent has like a window you need to special summon during their turn, so during your end phase you exceed or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I look at the during your opponent's turns effect, and I think that those are just really good. Plus, it banishes from the graveyard, so you're not really using any resource to activate this effect. Now, the fact that Merlin is dark is something that a lot of people are probably going to overlook, but not me, because now it's like, okay, BLS seems like it could be really consistent in this deck, because all the Noble Knights are light, and if you run a Fat Veiler, that's light too. All you really needed was some darts in this deck, some darts that were like integral to what you were trying to do. Deck, darts that didn't really conflict with the Noble Knight way of winning and the Noble Knight strategies, and you're probably gonna run 2 to 3 copies of Merlin. So I mean, now the Chaos engine is kind of there for the taking. I think that Konami obviously wasn't fucking around. I mean, we've got Rota at 2. Merlin is amazing. I mean, it definitely looks like a staple for any Noble Knight builds. And then you're getting the Bujin Carnation, like cards. So, I mean, Noble Knights are looking like they're going to be very legit. I think that it might be time to invest in some Xyz Coliseums, because if you get the right setup, usually with boards, just getting all the Noble Arms equipped spells, and you've got Xyz Coliseum to make sure your opponent can't really summon shit. I mean, they can't synchro because they need 2 monsters and they can't do it. I mean, the deck can be really, really, really difficult to deal with. I mean, outside of like Memory of an Adversary and Super Poly, you can pretty much make an uncrackable board where your opponent can't advance the game state and you just beat the shit out of them with a monster that can't be targeted, it can't be destroyed, and I mean, just has way too much attack power for them to handle. So let me know what you guys think. I think that Merlin is amazing. Again, I actually like that the stats on this card are respectable. 1400. I expected a card with a Lonefire Blossom effect to maybe be like, I don't know, 800 or something like that. The fact that it's dark means BLS. You can now throw it in the deck. It can be really consistent. Noble Knights definitely looking like a very legit deck. Thank you guys for watching as always. Subscribing makes life happy.